think it's interesting because the welfare state took the place of a lot of charity that existed in the past, and even further back, the idea of noblesse oblige, the obligation of the nobility. And so what ended up happening was, hey, we legislated all of these welfare programs that kind of eschewed that responsibility from people in the upper classes, because they're like, okay, well, I'm already paying my taxes. I'm doing my noble obligations.
Yeah.
What more do you want from me?
Part of high especially society was that the women did charity work.
Sure.
And that's how you actually get your foot in the door, is to find charity and become like the head of it, so that everybody else wanted to come under your leadership. And that's how you become a female leader in the community. And when that was taken away, well, then what else are, these elite, and those 1% that people see all the time, what are they doing? They're just sitting there on their stacks, I guess. And that's how I'm not saying that's what it is, but that's how it's perceived.
Or portrayed.
Yeah. There's a lot of foundations, stuff that come from that. And it's awesome to see how many large-scale organizations have come from those 1%ers that have provided opportunities for a ton of people. But the thing that kind of sticks in the back of my brain is it could have been a lot more if the welfare state hadn't have, kind of muscled its way in.
Well, and it's not just low-income voters. There's a lot of people that just believe that that is an obligation of the government, i.e. the taxpayers, to go ahead and do that. Because, the nameless, faceless government doesn't handle it. It is individual taxpayers and corporations that pay taxes to pay for these things.
I think a lot of people, especially a lot of people our age and younger, don't really get that is where the plight of the middle class that people talk about, that's where that came from, is the pulling down of the old order and under the old contract and putting this up of this kind of amalgamation of social order that we have.
Sure. I mean, if you look back in the day, the middle class was the business and merchant class. Right, is the business and merchant class would go ahead and serve at the behest of the aristocracy and get them the things they needed from lands far away to go ahead and suit their needs, while also meeting the needs of the local populace. And so they literally were the middle class. They served both the
middleman. They're literally the middleman.
Yeah, they served those beneath them and they served them above them. And that was how you were established in the middle class, and probably one of the easiest, well, I say easiest, like in quotes, the most direct way to lift yourself from poverty was to go ahead and become a well-known merchant. Now, let's see. So we talked about the welfare state, we talked about capitalism and the Industrial Revolution. So now we've got dual incomes. So both men and women can go ahead and go to work. And we've got birth control. So we can have as much consequence-free sex as we want. Consequence-free sex as we want. And all the freedoms at our behest.
Anything goes.
Anything goes. Are men and women any better off as a result of it?
Well, I mean, we still have a bunch of angry feminist women saying no. It's still tough to be a woman. We still hear F the patriarchy and stuff. How many years now later? 50 years pretty much?
Right. And another thing is when you go ahead and ask, hey, can you enumerate a specific right that you do not have that men have? You hear crickets.
Yeah.
And you hear things, you hear allusions to big, nameless, faceless patriarchal systems rather than addressing specifics. You go, oh, there is this systematic oppression that exists that's keeping women down. And you ask them and point it out, and it is very difficult to put your finger on it.
Well, yeah, because it's actually, the weight is in the three other fingers pointing back at you.
Wait. You mean there's personal responsibility involved in any of these things?
Yeah. This whole thing where women, burning their bras and fighting for their, just rights to do basic things. That was cool and all. But they took it to the stratospheric level. That was just like, we need to do anything and everything, all the same, all are same. That's cool and all. But now there's, just like with everything, there are consequences to that. And now we're seeing it. And that is where we get the Delulu like mentality, where I should be able to do these things that we've mentioned, where it's like, I want to have my cake and eat it too.
Yeah, you
I
want
want
all the
all of the great, benefits and none of the consequences or responsibilities.
Yeah.
That is where this is coming from. Women's oppression, women are oppressing themselves.
I think a lot of that comes from themselves and not taking responsibility, right? Well, because just the idea of like liberty without responsibility is license, right? Freedom without your corresponding responsibility is at the expense of someone else.
That's chaos. It's chaotic nature right there.
Mm-hmm.
Just this tornado and everybody gets sucked in and, we get all of the essence and then you throw away the empty husk.
Sure. And we talked a couple of weeks back about how if you have a freedom, there's always a corresponding responsibility because every decision, every policy has trade-offs involved. Something is happening for something else to happen. Like anytime a tax is levied, that is money that is taken from the economy to go towards the taxing authority in every circumstance.
Yeah. As like, oh, we want to provide this benefit. Vote for it. Great. Who's going to pay for it?
Sure. And the tricky thing about having universal suffrage is oftentimes people will go ahead and vote for something that they have no stake in, right? They don't have a bill to pay in it. And so they are voting for something that they will never be responsible for dealing with. Mm-hmm. And so they go ahead and put that responsibility on other people. And, hey, because we have universal suffrage, that's just a fact of life. So we talked about the whole I don't need a man thing. So let's go ahead and share some statistics. So now marriages are at an all-time low where you've got 5.1 marriages per 1,000 people, which is half the long-term average going back to 1900 when it was first recorded.
That's wild.
Well, sure. I mean, and it used to be 1% of people got married per year, every year. And that's been the statistical average for the last 125 years. And now we're at half that.
Wow.
Sure. And then so you've got a 50% divorce rate across the board.
Yeah, so then half of those people will be divorced.
Sure. Now, of those divorces, 70 to 80% of those divorces are initiated by women. And if the woman is college educated or better, 90% of the divorces are initiated by women. Of the remaining marriages, so you've lopped off half the marriages, of the people that are solvent, 28% of those marriages are categorized as happy marriages by the statistics. So that means only about 14% of marriages are happy. But other things is that the birth rate is down. So from 1960, on average, you'd have 3.6 births per woman, whereas today we're at 1.64. So we're below the rate of replacement. Rate of replacement is one woman having 2 children.
Right.
And so we're below that replacement rate.
But if you're saying, these people, it's a shorter, fraction of people who get married. Mm-hmm. And it's an even smaller fraction of people who their marriages don't fail. Mm-hmm. And an even smaller fraction than that they get married. And if those are part of the ones who are the wedge of marriages who have children from a happy marriage, think about how that affects the next generation of people continuing to be happy people.
Oh yeah, I mean we've
not just like happy individual, whatever, like happy people who will produce the next generation of happy people.
Sure, because a lot of that is generational, right? You go ahead and pick it up from your family of origin. And I mean, we're seeing the effects of single parent households and things of that, single mom households more than anything else, because we see that statistically speaking, as far as crime rates and things of that nature, that single father households and intact families have roughly the same incidences of criminality and things of that nature, which is relatively low compared to single mother households. And it just is what it is.
Fight biology, and you can't fight statistics or the numbers, the actual numbers of people.
Cool. So let's go ahead and finish off talking about the new contract with diving in a little bit on feminism. We've been sprinkling it in throughout the conversation.
Definitely.
But we're going to go ahead and talk about how feminism wants to use law and public policy to promote women's interests, and oftentimes it is at the expense of men.
Hey, thanks for watching this clip. If you'd like to see more from this podcast, you can go ahead and click here, where the podcast episode is linked in its entirety. If you're new here, you might want to consider subscribing right here. Thanks so much. Make it a great day.